Alright, we're back at Barry's a few months later. It's April now. We installed the system back in October, and since then Barry's built a battery box around it. There's the cover there. Just took the cover off to look at everything. And we've had some issues with the system. The BMS has been opening the contactors. System's been tripped because the cells are so out of balance. We didn't have enough time to balance them before the install, so my original thinking was let's just hook up the system and charge it up to 90% SOC and have it sit there for a while and balance. The system running by itself never really did that, so the cells are still out of balance from this whole time. So we've been getting a lot of tripping from that. So I'm going to be, so I changed a lot of the BMS settings and a lot of the inverter settings, so now we're kind of just configuring everything and fine-tuning everything so we can get the system not tripping at the high state of charge and low state of charge. So that's the goal for this weekend. So I actually have the batteries balancing right now. When I looked into it, we have a really wide range here. So we have a maximum cell at 3.468 and a minimum cell at 3.314. So we have one cell balancing right now, that high one, and it's going to take a while for it to bleed off and to match up with the other cells. So what I've set up here is I just put a little trickle of charge on there so that one cell doesn't go too high. It's basically just kind of maintaining charge, slowly trickling it. We're not even near the high cell voltage, so it's safe for the cells. But I was actually charging with the inverter at like 70 amps, and that max cell number 8 there, yeah, cell number 8 was tripping the contactors. So hopefully we could do this for about a day or so and see if the cells get back into balance. That's the goal. So it actually looks like 2 cells are balancing now. We have 2 cells that are over 3.4 volts. So those will be balancing, and hopefully the system, cell number 8 could trip if it goes above, let's see, if it goes above 3.625. So we have some margin there. We're not even at 3.5 yet. So let's give this the whole day and see what happens. So, what I've done here is I set up the maximum cell voltage as when we'll get a fault at 3.625, but then also there's a stack voltage limit of 58.4 volts. So if either a cell goes above 3.625 or the stack goes above 58.4, then the BMS will actually open the contactors. I'm hoping that it never gets there and we can have the Sol-Ark inverter essentially charge up well below that limit, and in other words we'll charge to like 90% SOC and hopefully never let the cells get into their maximum range. Same thing goes for the bottom of the SOC. So we have a cell fault at 2.575 or a stack voltage at 41.5. So there's a fault and the contactor will open at that point. The inverter only goes down to 43 volts at the stack level. So that shouldn't be a problem at the stack level, but because the cells are so out of balance, we're seeing very low cell voltages towards the bottom of charge and very high cell voltages getting at the top of charge. So once we get everything balanced, hopefully we don't get into any of those extreme points where the BMS will have a fault. And then hopefully the inverter will sit safely in the middle, doing something like a 10% to 90% state of charge cycling. That's the goal. Let's see if we can do it this weekend. got it charged up almost to 100%. We had a single cell that was going into the maximum cell voltage, so I had to stop charging. But we are balancing. We have 7 cells balancing. It's going to take a while. We still have about 100 millivolts of charge difference. So I'm going to leave it like this for the rest of the day, and then at about 5 p.m. tonight we're going to try doing a full discharge cycle. So let's see how this goes. Okay, here we go. We're in the peak period for time of use at Barry's place, and we're basically zeroing out his meter, so he's not using any grid power. We have all the loads going for the house and everything. We have the solar still producing solar power, and the batteries are making the difference. So okay, we just turned on air conditioner, so the current went up on the batteries. So that's cool, this is working. We reconfigured the BMS and reconfigured the Sol-Ark converter, and look at that, we're zeroing out. Here, let me zoom in there. We have zeroed out the grid power, and that's the important thing. Okay, doing a discharge test here. I just changed the Sol-Ark from, instead of measuring percentage, I'm having it measure battery voltage now. I think that's going to be more accurate for the lithium pack. I'm going to discharge it down to about 49 volts, I believe was what I put in. And here's the BMS screen right now, and we're at like 51, almost 52 volts. We've discharged almost half the capacity, so almost exactly half, because we're at 280 amp hours at discharge. So we should be at about 50% state of charge. I'm going to kind of try to get down to like 20 or 30%, and hopefully that low cell right there, you see that low cell, hopefully that doesn't trip the whole system. So I'm going to keep an eye on it, and my goal here today is to go to a full discharge. Hopefully the contactors and the BMS don't open, and then once I get to that low voltage point, charge it all the way back up while it's sunny and the solar's out. And then I already did that yesterday and it didn't trip when we were charging all the way up, and we got a lot of cell balancing at that time. So I'll recharge by the end of the day, get it fully charged, get the cells balanced a little bit more, and then from 5 to 8 p.m. We'll discharge and basically make the meter here use zero grid power, because Barry has time of use pricing, and if we can zero out his bill at that time of the day, he saves a lot of money. That's the whole reason why we did this. Okay, I also wanted to show a off-grid test that we did right before I left. So this is actually, I think 2 days ago. So you can see the loads happening here. This is midnight. Come in the morning, you can start to see the solar production starting to happen. You can see that curve, some sort of peak power thing here. And then right here is when we disconnected the grid. So we were essentially solar and battery power only. So this up and down is, so we have the difference of the loads in the solar were bouncing around a bit, and the battery was making up the difference. So it's kind of neat. At that time, it was actually, the solar was close to matching all the loads, and it was kind of charging, discharging up and down just a little bit. Up by 3 kilowatts and down by 3 kilowatts. So kind of interesting to see it jump around like that. And then you can see the solar basically set, the sunset, and then the battery was covering all these loads. So the battery and the load are on top of each other. You can barely see the battery line behind it. The loads were pretty low at night, and the battery was covering everything. You can see the SOC starting to drop. This SOC isn't super accurate. It's a little, there's a lot more capacity than the inverter thinks it has. So this is midnight of the next night, so it went from here to here, still meeting all the loads, and then the sun came up and it started to charge the batteries and cover the loads. And the SOC starts to climb again. Barry connected the grid connection again around 10:30. There was some spike for some reason. I think actually because of the drop in solar. I think that's what it was. And then so this is a grid positive. So I think the grid was actually charging the batteries here. The batteries were basically getting fully charged at 5 kilowatts. I think here I changed it to charge from solar only. Or no, actually, never mind. The batteries became full at that point. So on this day, I was still charging from the grid and from solar, just kind of like max power at 5 kilowatts. The batteries become full. All of that extra solar power is then feeding back to the grid there. So that's happening there. And then the sun starts to set and the solar production goes away. The loads are still there. And then Barry hit the time of use peak period, which is 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And you can see that there's no grid power here happening really. The loads and the battery are basically matching each other. So the battery's exporting the same amount that the load is. So this was all still grid connected, but the grid didn't need to provide any power. So that's what the SOC was dropping. And then we're out of that time of use period, and then the grid can then power the loads again. And the battery took a break. So pretty cool to see how this is all working. The Sol-Ark EMS built into the inverter is pretty advanced and pretty good. So it was able to do everything we needed to do, and I was able to control it remotely. So pretty awesome. Okay, so I have remote desktop set up for Barry's place. Right now we have just started their time of use discharge on the battery. No one's there right now, so the energy is pretty low. We're doing about max 20 amps. I think there's even a little bit of solar production right now too. I did get the state of charge calibrated, so we're now at, we're very full, 98%. I've only discharged about 13 amp hours. We still have that one cell that is very low, and every day the 15 other cells are passively balancing for a little bit part of the day. I think it's going to take a few weeks for these to all match up, but it's okay, it can slowly do that. It never got too hot today, so got about 35 C at the most, so that's all looking pretty good. Coming over here, yeah, just some more details about the cells, what cell voltage each one is at. So this is the Nuvation BMS interface. Now I'm going to switch over to the Sol-Ark interface. Here is kind of showing what's happening with everything. The solar actually isn't connected on the DC input, so it doesn't show any solar. The solar just is AC coupled, so it just kind of reduces the load. But what's cool about this is we can see that the batteries are discharging almost a kilowatt to everything here through the inverter. Most of those loads are going to, most of the power from the batteries going to loads. There's a little bit coming in or out of the grid, but generally speaking, it's pretty close to zero. I have no idea what this MI is. If anyone has any idea what that is, please let me know. But it's giving us 8 watts of power. I have no idea. Okay, scrolling down, so we have, this is the energy generation, kind of everything all in one. We have no PV, so I'll unclick that. We have no microinverters. But what this looks like is the grid was using power at night. The batteries aren't really doing much. there's no solar. And then the solar comes up, and at about kind of right in the morning, it starts charging, the solar starts charging the batteries. So I've set it up where we only charge from solar. There's a few kind of peaks here of maybe an air conditioner turning on or a pump, I'm not really sure. So the batteries are charging and charging. They basically get to 100%. You can see the line here, getting to 100%. And then all of that excess solar energy is then just exported to the grid. So it's showing a negative grid number, meaning it's exporting. So that's all solar kind of pumping out there. And then let's see, this is 5 p.m. Once the sun is set and time of use is fairly expensive, you can see that the loads don't go negative or positive anymore for the most part. Everything here is the battery kind of providing power to the loads. So there's that. We can also jump up to equipment here and go to battery. See a little bit about the battery that's happening. We can look at the power. This matches kind of what we were seeing before. SSC, we only used 25% of the capacity from yesterday's time of use 3-hour period, so that's pretty good. We got plenty of headroom. We can see the voltage change here, and because of the ratio you can't see much. Got up to like 54.7 is kind of the max. And then the current should look like the power, yep. And then what does the temp look like? That's odd. I guess it's not showing temperature from the inverter. I'm also monitoring temperature here from the thermistors on the BMS, so that's pretty important. So that's it. I think that's a good rundown of what the system is looking like. I consider this a fully commissioned system and ready to go. We did a few cycles. There was no even chance of anything tripping. So everything looks really good. We're happy and Barry's happy and the system is running well. All right. Thanks for watching.